the last thing that I would like to state here is that we were on a time and materials contract. So even though we took this on as a patriotic duty in many ways to make sure the system gets built, every hour spent on the project was approved, reviewed, and signed off by the project leadership every week. No one was allowed to be added to the project or removed from the project without pre-authorization. No one was allowed to work anywhere but on the project team. So everyone was on the floor. For 22 months, we had people, between 30 to 60 dedicated people here in Little Rock on the project floor doing what they needed to do. And every hour is accounted for. There have been statements that perhaps engagement wasted money. We can account for every single dollar that was paid for us and what the hours behind that were and what the speaker did. One final thing. Our role changed constantly. We were brought in as a system integrator. Then we provided the resources to do IT infrastructure deployment and support. Then we did production support as needed. Then we did software customization when asked. So there is no single thing that we were asked to do, but rather whatever wasn't working. Wherever there was a fire, we were told to go stamp it out, and we did. And that's how EDF got built. So it is not that you did not have a system integrator. You have always had a system integrator. The question is the role of system integrator properly understood and properly empowered? Because if you have a system integrator that cannot enforce design, then what good is a system integrator? If every vendor is going to code to their own will, and they're not going to be held accountable to a single design paradigm, then system integrator is nothing more than a consultant yelling at the top of his or her lungs, this is not right, and people will simply ignore them. So as you look forward, and as you look at, hey, we need to bring in a system integrator, that is admirable. The system integrator has to be allowed to manage what system integrators must manage, which is the design, the architecture, the fabric, the integration points, and how all these software pieces connect with each other. But they're not going to miraculously talk to each other. Those technologies are complex, and there is many, many ways to do this, and you have to have an SI that you trust to say that's the way we're going to do it. And that is a fundamental message that I want to communicate to this committee, that yes, these projects need system integrators, and yes, without that you will have challenges, but even with an SI, you must make sure the SI has the right authority. And then finally, I want to present here how the hours were spent, because every single dollar spent on the project was accounted for in terms of hours. You can see the spikes leading up to enrollment, because as enrollment approaches, people are brought onto the project, and when enrollment started and production support started happening, people were let go from the project, and the next open enrollment approaches, we spike again. So this was not a steady state contract. We were adding resources when we were asked to, we were removing resources when we were asked to. And that's how these hours ultimately added up. And then finally, I would like to show you one chart which really illustrates how these roles are played out. Prime contractor, DHS, project manager, CAI. We were in the system integrator role at various times in the project, not consistently, but certainly the only ones who did the system integration work. Software customization fell upon eSystems, Redmain, IBM, and engagement at various points in time. And production support fell upon engagement of eSystems at various points in time. Those are the roles. There was no role of a lead IT vendor. You can say that you had a system integrator that you were not pleased with, although you did not hear that before. But certainly there is no such thing as a lead IT vendor. There's a role of a prime and a PM on an SI, and the roles we perform with that are an SI, the software development team, and the production support team. And that's all, sir. I will not go into the second part of the presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
I don't mind you going into the last slide. I just don't want a sales pitch. So would you care to defend your 7 points there?
Let me start by saying that we believe EEF is a fundamentally an extremely important system for the state of Arkansas and for Arkansans. So we would like to see it succeed in any which way we can contribute or not. However you proceed, our vision of being part of this project for 22 months from the beginning till January, these were the challenges we saw. The roles and responsibilities are unclear, and those must be clear. There is a trinity at work that, from a roles perspective, there has to be a prime contractor, There has to be a system integrator, maybe the same, maybe different. There has to be a PMO, project management office, that works in symbiosis with the other two. And the system integrator must manage the how of the system, while the project manager defines the when, and the prime defines the why and for whom. And those roles cannot be interchanged. You cannot have a system integrator that is trying to be a PMO, you cannot have a PMO that's trying to be a system integrator, and you cannot say system integration is a luxury we will implement when we need it, or only for a few weeks when we need it. It is a constant reference, like having an architect on a 100-room mansion. If you're building a mega house, you need to have an architect that understands all the nuances of all the pieces. And that role cannot come and go. The second is, projects like this are very difficult in any model, but to do them in a time and material model, as we've all discussed per here, are doubly challenging. So fixed price, fixed scope contract makes a lot of sense, one throat to choke. However, that one throat to choke is going to want a well-defined scope. And this project did not have the luxury of that scope, and that's no one's fault. The ACA and the rules around ACA were evolving. You could not have given anyone the scope than what you know now. Hindsight, we know a lot more. But in March of 2013, what we thought we knew turned out to be a fraction of what we needed to know. So a lot got learned over the next 18 months in terms of that's what we need and what we don't. So moving forward, you do have enough of a scope definition, in our opinion, to move to a fixed price contract. The third is, and this question was asked earlier by Senator, that why is this so complex? And I would be happy to give you that point of view, but it is complex. You're dealing with a system that largely depends on external data sources. You're not dealing with a system like a legacy mainframe that stands like a grain silo with everything inside it, logic, data, processing power, and you can run it. This is the antithesis of that. This system is a framework, as the IBM folks said earlier. It's like tipping the mainframe on its side and making it a framework. It's a horizontal system. It has to talk to the federal data hub, it has to talk to the Medicaid management information system, it has to talk to the carriers as needed, and this is exactly the opposite of a traditional legacy system. So it's going to be built from parts, because you can't build it from the way legacy systems used to be built. Which means you have to now pay much greater attention to integration than any time in the past history that you would have to do that. And that's a different skill. It's challenging its own way. So if you bring in a prime contractor that does not understand integration, then I fear many of the problems will manifest themselves again. But then to achieve an integrated solution, you have to commit to it. You cannot build this in silos. No plane gets built where somebody is building the fuselage without talking to the guy who's going to hook it up to an engine. Things won't miraculously connect. So the more silos you create, Magi versus non-Magi versus Snap, and the more separation you do, while on paper it looks like you'll get more speed, more expediency, it's at the end, when you try to put these pieces together, you get a non-functioning system, and then you have to go back and do a lot of time and money investment to fix it. So design it right, because if you don't, it looks like for a while things are moving along, and then suddenly the cliff hits. So that's a very key concern that I have in terms of lack of appreciation for how these pieces need to ultimately fit together. Project management is always a given. I don't think it deserves a lot of attention, a lot of belaboring, but the point is project management of an integrated solution is far more complex than a legacy system. Legacy platform, you can plan out 4 years. Here you have to deal with constant changes in software. New releases come in. Think of it this way. You have a car, you're driving it, and a new engine is shipped to you. You've got to change the engine out while you're driving the car. That's not easy. It takes a lot of work. It's very expensive. So managing those